Welcome back to another edition of the Athlete Hackers podcast. My name is Chris Schrade.
And my name is Mark Spellman. Before we introduce our next guest, we'll go over our last guest, who was the director of Olympic sports for strength and conditioning out at Arizona State, Leanne Blinn. Unfortunately, I had to leave the episode early because I had to go pick up my child, or one of my children. And there definitely will be a part 2 to that. The main things that we hit on with that episode was the wonderful profession of strength and conditioning.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tease because we didn't get around to the athletes, but that's what part 2 is going to be all about. But still, there's a lot of good content in there about what you guys touched on. So check that one out.
Especially for those people that are aspiring to be strength and conditioning coaches, or somebody that's in the field and wants to know how to get to that next level of being a director or overseeing their own sports performance strength and conditioning program, whether it be in the university professional setting or even in the private sector, where Leanne has been successful on both cases. So that being said, it is my honor, it is my privilege to introduce our next guest, a gentleman that came into my life about 4 years ago, not knowing that he came into my life 4 years ago. I was at the New Canaan YMCA as the director of athletic performance. I was in a very bad place personally. I had some very bad health issues. I was dealing with some heart issues. I just had C7T1 fuse, had been out of the collegiate strength and conditioning profession for about 4 years then. And I had happened to see this gentleman's presentation at Summer Strong 10. And that's where I really wanted to talk to him because of that presentation. And it says a lot about the character of this individual, not only as an elite level athlete, but as an elite level person. It is my honor, it is my privilege to introduce Mr. Brandon Lilly. How are you today, sir?
Doing really well. As you know, we pushed this back a little bit. I was feeling pretty stupid whenever I made the connection here, but we were going between 2 emails, and when I was on the road, I get a little bit bamboozled sometimes. So I was telling one guy on this side of the equation that I had to reschedule, and telling you that I was good for today. So it was competing with the same podcast, but after feeling like an idiot, otherwise I feel pretty good today. Had a good
Right,
run.
you're here. We got you here. That's all that counts.
That's all that matters. That's the best thing for me, is just getting somewhere, because usually if I get there, I do all right. So, but I trained earlier. I ran just a little while ago. I'm doing this. I got Jiu-Jitsu later. Got my, got family stuff later. So it's just all around a good day. Any day at home is a good day.
For those individuals that do not know you and are unaware of the many accomplishments that you have, give them a quick rundown of who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff. Because I'm gonna dive deeper. I'm gonna dive deeper into that Summer Strong 10 presentation.
For sure. So for me, a lot of what is really known about me now is that I work with Sornex, and primarily my interest is in the outdoors capacity with that, hunting, camping, hiking, all that fun stuff. But that job evolved from the fact that I was a power lifter. I was a world-class power lifter at my best, ranked number 1 in a couple weight divisions at one time. And that led into a pretty traumatic injury. It was a bilateral knee injury, ended my career more or less. I mean, I was able to compete, come back around, but I had 19 knee surgeries to correct the knee. Came back through 17 of those surgeries and continued to compete. And I think somewhere along the way, my story transitioned from an athlete story to just kind of an overcoming story. People connected with that. A lot of athletes go through injury. And where that really took off for me personally was through Sornex. We do a lot of veteran outreach. We do a lot of stuff with people that are, transitioning into different phases of their life, whether it be athletics, whether it be military, whatever. And I just started to cling to guys in the Recon Sniper Foundation, the Green Beret Foundation, Special Forces Foundation, where a lot of these people for 20 years, similar to my ascent in powerlifting, I've invested nearly 2 decades into this one pursuit. You have people who are, really dedicated an entire lifetime, probably burn up personal relationships, probably damage, the capacity to say they have a normal life to have this one focus of the special forces or whatnot. So my work started to diversify a little bit more and realize that, hey, even though I didn't serve in the military, even though I didn't get blown up in combat or get sent home because of a medical discharge or something like that, there is a story in going from a high flyer to just a regular guy and how you figure all that out. And a lot of us struggle with that. I think that's one of the contributing factors to the suicide rate in the military. I think a very, very unspoken suicide rate that if you dig around and start looking, you'll see it is it's not just the NFL players of old. It's rampant within the athletic committee or the community that a lot of these former athletes, especially high flyers, are committing suicide. And a lot of the transition comes after college when maybe a guy doesn't have anything to do after college ball. A lot of it comes shortly after these pro careers are stunted by injury or just the fact that it's the best in the world and you're just not the best anymore. Those kind of things. So depression, alcoholism, I mean, it just runs rampant. And this speaks to the kind of work that I want to do. And that's really what I'm doing now, is just trying to reach people, trying to educate people on how to be stronger under a barbell, how to be stronger with a kettlebell, how to be stronger just as people through their everyday lives. I mean, you don't have to conquer the world to conquer the mountain in front of you. And I think that's one of the things that I've really clung to, kind of organically evolved the idea of a +1 mentality. If you can't paint a whole picture right now, just do the next brush stroke the best you can and build on that. And that's what I'm trying to do with my life. I mean, my life has been a series of chapters of ups and downs, rise and falls, but the overall trend is going very, very well. And I think that's because of things I've learned, people I've learned from, and just understanding that every single win doesn't have to be monumental. Sometimes the win is just doing the act. And kind of like you said, getting here is a win for me today. So that's really who I am and what I'm doing. There's still a bit of air of a mystery around what I do for Sorenex, but I think Bert would tell you that my strongest gift is the fact of community and networking. And I'm always talking to people. I'm always reaching out to people. I'm always trying to connect dots between people who are doing, and I don't care about following and influence like a lot of people do. I care about people who are doing stuff within their home. They're doing stuff within their community, their town. Because right now, in a world where so little makes sense, if you can do one thing positively and impact another human being positively, that's world change, because trajectory is built on that. And I think that a lot of people.
Is that kind of one of the suggestions that you're giving some of these guys that you're coming across that are transitioning from like you said, the high flyer into a more regular lifestyle?
Well, it's not just that. I mean, that is a foundational point of it. But the other side of it is, you give a guy a mission overseas and literally and figuratively and literally, he might be doing something that's literally changing the course of the world. That's some pretty significant action. But we can't forget that if you raise your kids right, how much that'll impact the world. If you do something good for your community, if you start a business, or if you help a business owner, or if you just help your neighbor that can't mow their yard, that kind of stuff. And I know it sounds hippie, and I know it sounds all kind of like a dream state almost, but we do have to be better to each other. We do have to be better to ourselves, and we do have to start as close to home as we can, because that's where we can actually make the impact, because that's where we are. I don't have the solutions for the government. I don't have solutions for everything that's going on in the world, but I can sure tell you, if my son has a situation, I can look at it left and I can look at it right, and I can help him figure out which way to go. Those are the kind of decisions that if you scale it all down and if you turn off the news for a little bit, you probably got 5 or 6 problems right at your fingertips. And that's what I try to stay into, because like I told you before we started, me being bored is self-destructive. I'm hyperactive. I've got a go mentality. My brain's always clicking. So if I'm just churning away at one thing at a time, just getting through my day, I'm winning those steps over and over and over. And I'm not trying to have too many detractions. But yeah, I tell anyone, start with yourself. That saying of you can't love somebody if you don't love yourself. Well, I don't think you can know somebody if you don't know yourself. I don't think you can help somebody if you don't help yourself first. So if you can't muster helping someone else, do the best thing for yourself. do the very best thing that you can do right now. Do you need to lose 10 pounds? Do you need to read a book? Do you need to send somebody a letter to say I'm sorry? Do you need to make a phone call? Like, what is the best thing for you to do to get forward momentum tomorrow? You know, and just keep doing those things in a fashion that's so simple. The scenario that I use all the time is on a diet. If I walk into a restaurant and they have every single thing on the menu, like a Cheesecake Factory, they got anything that anybody could ever want on that menu. So if I go in there and I just open that door, there it is. It's all right there. Anything that I can want. But if I'm on a diet and I walk into the Cheesecake Factory and say, hey, I need a 6-ounce steak, I need a salad and a baked potato. Can you get that for me?
Not the mac and cheeseburger?
Not the mac and cheeseburger. That's on cheat day. But seriously, remove those options, remove those hurdles, because I'll tell you what I believe is the biggest addiction in this country is comfort, right? We all know if you're on a diet, you can't have certain things, but what do we do when we go to the grocery store? We buy those things, or we have those things in the cupboard, or we have those things easy access. And you tell me that we're any different than a drug addict sitting down here, you know, begging for change so he can buy their fix. We buy our fix over and over and over. We just call them something else. You know, we look at people with addiction as something else, but we're all addicted to things. We all have things that we struggle with. So for me, it's a recognition of what those things are. Keep those things away from me. Don't let those things close to me. Walk away from situations where they're there. Whatever the situation is, like, I'm not going to walk in an ice cream shop if I'm trying to lose weight. I'm not going to, you know, drink a bunch of coffee if I'm having trouble sleeping. It's one of those things. Like, I love coffee and I love ice cream, but if they're causing friction or problems in my life, even if they're at a micro level, cut them out. And it's just a process of elimination through discipline. You know, it doesn't have to be like, if you look at my Instagram page, the Peace, Love, and Meat page specifically, all I show is repetition. You'll see me every day. I'm training, or I'm running, or I'm going to class for martial arts, or I'm cooking my meals. I eat 2 meals a day. I have a shake in the middle. It's like over and over and over, this consistency. There's no magic formula. There's no fancy supplements. There's no, you know, miracle drugs out there. I swear to God, my life got better when I give myself like a bowling alley lane. Like, I like the bumpers. I like to hit strikes. So if I swing too high on one side of the scale or swing too low, I'm always in this like forgiveness zone is kind of what I call it for myself. You know, I can have parameters that I stick within. Can I have a beer every once in a while? Sure. Can I have 10 beers every once in a while? Absolutely not. You know, it's just allowing myself the things that allow me to swing within those parameters. And right now, for example, I want to be a really, really athletic 235 pounds. So my high side is 245. I kind of enjoy being 235, stick to my numbers. If mom fixes a cheeseburger and I want to go have a cheeseburger at mom's house, I go have that cheeseburger. But I can't have this perpetuation of a month-long binge. But if I go 3 or 4 days, like if I go Friday, Saturday, Sunday with my family and we just cook out all weekend and have a big feast, yeah, I'm probably going to kick ass on Monday, but I'm not going to beat myself up for those 3 days. But when I started this process, I didn't have that kind of leniency. My lane was much more narrow because I had much more immediate needs. I was 348 pounds. I was just coming off powerlifting, 19 knee surgeries. My body fat percentage was probably in the 30% range. I was just lazy and fat through all these surgeries. So I couldn't have those 20-pound swings. It was like, if I gain 5 pounds, I've got to double down and lose 10 more pounds. You know, it was just, as you get more and more close to your goal, you can widen the gaps because you have a system now. You've proven that you can get to a certain point of achievement, and then it's just micro dial. In the beginning, it's got to be really, really hard structure. But that's what I'm trying to do for myself, is show people, you know, the whole entire evolution is 800 and some odd days now. You know, it started June 1st of 2019. So on this day right now, I could not do the same things with the same freedom on day one that I've earned after 800 plus days now. You see what I mean? So I just tell people to take it one day at a time, just like you're writing a story. You got to write it one page at a time. Even if you know what the ending or the final outcome is going to be, you got to fill in the middle till you get there, or you don't have a book. You know, you just got a game of telephone or something where you're telling stories. But that's what I'm really trying to do is just show people a systematic way. It's not a sales pitch. There's no program to buy. You know, that might be something that I just write down and formulate where people can buy later. But it's like, it's never come from a place of wanting to sell something. It's wanting to fix myself and share that story.
And I think the main thing that you touched on, there's a couple things, you know, one, you getting into jiu-jitsu is terrifying because it is all about being consistent, showing up on a daily basis. But you at 235 pounds, 100 pounds less than your 110, 115 pounds lighter than your heaviest is terrifying. But it is all about consistency. I mean, I have people that come to me and they're like, how do I lose weight? I'm like, all right, well, it's a mathematical equation to start. You got to burn more than you put in, and you have to do it every day. I mean, 3,500 pounds, 300 and 500 calories equals 1 pound. So
right.
If you do a 500 calorie deficit every day, you'll lose 1 pound in a week.
Yep.
But that's 500 calories every day. You have to burn more than you put in. It's just math.
Sure.
And there are a lot of people out there that are trying to, you know, smoke and mirror and make it more than it is. But at the end of the day, it's a 500 calorie deficit for 7 days a week equals 1 pound. You do that for 4 weeks, that's 4 pounds.
Yep.
You know, and it will stay off. But
yeah,
the hardest, as you said, it's just like writing a book. That first step is the hardest step.
Yep.
You know,
well, and you have the people have the idea, and people know what they want. Like every, you know, and I'm just gonna broad stroke here, but every woman wants to be that size 4 dress. Every guy wants to be that, you know, that hulking physique, and every single person can reach some form or fashion of that visual, right? Every person, it may not be a size 4, it might be a size 2 for one woman, it might be a size 6 or an 8 for the next woman, but every person can get very, very close to that ideal. But it's the willingness to give up things in the process to get there. Because once we get to a place, our body likes to stay more or less around, you know, what it is. So like a 10-pound swing might sound aggressive, but I'm a big fluids guy. I take in a lot of fluids every day, so I fluctuate a lot of water. So I'm not necessarily saying 10 pounds of fat versus 10 pounds of gain or like muscle gain. I'm just saying I watch what my body's doing. I try to find the averages and stick there. But what I think happens to so many people is they see other people that have already been there before. Like it's very easy for me to put on mass because my body has already accumulated a great deal of mass before. So my road back up to say 275 pounds would be a lot easier than a guy that had never been there before. So as an adult, like the one thing that I tell people, we need to be old enough to realize our journey is a completely different thing than the guy right beside us. Even if we're eating the same foods, even if we're doing the same exercise, you will get different yields based on those things. And over time, we can dial those things in. But you can't give up what you see the difference in 1 month because you're comparing it to where you're going to be in 5 years. Like some people's journeys takes 5 years. I mean, like I said, we're almost 900 days into my story from June 1st, 2019, where I was not, you know, I haven't lost 100 pounds in that time. I've probably refined about 40 or 50 pounds in that time period. But what I mean, if I had given up knowing that this was possible 300 days ago just because I wasn't here yet, I lose everything. Because like I told people when I started this thing, my next goal is to live till I'm 75. Men in my family die at 73 years old. Whatever the reason is, that's the marker. So if I can live to 75 years old by doing this thing in a slow burn, low boil kind of way, you know, I'm a very intense person. I do a lot of output every day. But if you look at some of the food I eat when I'm on the road, I'm indulging in life. Like I feel like it's a fair trade-off to not have a perfectly chiseled six-pack, to go out with friends that I only see once or twice every 3 years and have a good meal and have a few drinks with them. Like the way I'm living is non-restricted. It's just controlled. I'm trying to set up an order where I can have my fun and I can have a piece of cake every once in a while and eat it, you know, enjoy myself, because I don't want this to be something. I don't want it to be the wagon that I can fall off of, so to say. If I make a mistake or I indulge too much or I wake up with a hangover, okay, dummy, don't do that again. Like, but it's going to happen because I'm around exciting, deep dive kind of people. And it's not like we're sitting there crying into a bottle of beer singing sad songs. Most of the time it's like, hey, we had a couple of beers with dinner and then we sat around a campfire for 6 or 7 hours, you know, and that's where it came from. So to me, is that experience worth more than waking up without a hangover? Sometimes, sometimes not. I just want to build a life of enrichment. I want to build a life of experiences, but I also want to have a life of discipline, because the more discipline I find that I have, the more experiences I can enjoy. It's just a simple equation for me. Like you said, that's the rhythm for me. Some people will need to adjust their scale, but for me, it's always going to be experiences with amazing. I mean, it's the Bert Soren recipe. You give me amazing people and amazing places, and we'll do amazing things, you know?
What did you start jiu-jitsu when you were 348? When you were 800 days ago?
No. I started jiu-jitsu. So last year I was training with a guy named Terrence Mitchell out of South Africa. He and I just kind of hit it off really fast, became really the best of friends. And he had an untimely death October 27th, and I had been training since about October 13th. I'd done jiu-jitsu a couple of times, like literally less than 10 classes in my life. 2 gyms. I think they had a five class enrollment kind of deal when I signed up for both of those. Just didn't fit at the time. Like I said, I was trying to find something to attach myself to, but it just didn't click. And I just started it prior to his death. And after his death, I was feeling a pretty big hole. So I kind of just doubled down on that, because I couldn't express, you know, what I was really feeling. But the harder I pushed my training, the harder I kind of pushed my body, I wasn't so mentally beat up from him being gone. You know what I mean? So I think the timing of it, and I really do think that's Terrence, probably his biggest blessing in my life, is that his loss kind of drove my fire into jiu-jitsu a little bit, because I was really, really hurting from it. He and I had just really, like, we had things that we wanted to build out. We had a vision for doing some, you know, on-site type of training camps for men and things like that. So we had really built out a 2 or 3 year model of what we hoped to do. And really, he was hoping to come over in about a month right after Thanksgiving. So, you know, a lot of dreams and feelings kind of just went down whenever he passed away. So jiu-jitsu really became the bridge to healing, because that's where I found a whole group of like awesome people. Throughout my life, I kind of ran away from my hometown. I always wanted to get out of here. I never wanted to invest in this place too much, because it's the last place I wanted to be. And I never really developed a strong sense of community here. Mark could probably tell you, I have a network of people all over the country, but very few people at home. So when I was feeling all that, I found the gym, which is just an awesome group of people. So good for me, so challenging for me as far as jiu-jitsu. The competition level is very high, but you know, they do stuff as a group. They go to the bar, or they have a cookout, or they get together for birthdays and that kind of stuff. And I know it sounds silly, but at 40 years old, or coming up on 40 years old, I never really had those things on a consistent basis. Because when I was powerlifting, my teammates were some of my biggest competition. So we were around each other a lot, but it wasn't always like, hey, we're buddies, and hey, we're hanging out after the gym. You know, it was like we were there for a purpose. We pushed each other, probably hated each other as much as we loved each other. You know, it was just, I don't want to say that we weren't friends, but it wasn't like, you just didn't let those people in as close as some of the other people. So for a lot of my life, I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. If you're out there doing this, stop. Is trying to have that lone wolf mentality. Like, I'm going to self-make myself into this thing that nobody's ever thought of or been before. And really what all you're doing is just being an asshole and isolating yourself. I mean, there are times for that, but also this world's too big and too dangerous, and there's just too many pitfalls to try to do it alone. You're better off getting on shoulders of others that have done it before you, I think.
Well, as the saying goes, the wolf, the strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the pack is the wolf. So I mean,
absolutely,
you want to be around, and kind of what's, you know, kind of got me with the podcast is getting around like-minded people, strengthening my bonds and friendships with them, and strengthening my tribe, so I can be better for all the people that depend on me. And that leads me.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. Go for it. That leads you to what?
That actually leads me to the Summer Strong, and
yep.
and that tribe. I mean, it's a tribe of 500 to 1,000 people. I mean, I don't know how many people they had at the last one, but I believe at the Summer Strong 12, I believe Terrence was there.
Yes.
And because I think he won for being the longest traveler to Summer Strong because he came from South Africa. So
Yep.
I just remember I remember him standing up and yelling and being in his short shorts and his open button down shirt. And I'm like, okay, I got to meet that guy.
For sure. Well, you know, the one thing that I've always told people is, I said, Bert, you know, did a fantastic job of tricking people into thinking that a strength exercise equipment company is actually that. It's actually a people company. I've actually called Bert the nucleus for a long time because, you know, a lot of people are like, man, to me, they'll tell me that my network is deep, or they'll tell me that I'm really good with people and that kind of stuff. And 100%, that goes to the fact that I've watched Bert the way that he is. I don't know how to say it other than Bert is one of the most genuine, honest, humble people I've ever been around. And coming from a place where in powerlifting, I think it was very easy for me to play the bad guy. And it's not like I was playing a character, so to say, but I wanted to be big. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to look the part. And a lot of that stuff, you know, as we were talking about the juxtaposition with the baby pictures that I posted, you know, my cousin, her little baby. The idea is that I wanted to look this part because I wasn't that at all. Like, it's not who I was. And I think so many men, especially in this life, try to wrap themselves up in these macho positions or these places where they're kind of like postured, rather than just accepting, like, hey, I've never been in a fist fight. I want to learn. That's totally cool. You see it all the time when you talk to people about starting jiu-jitsu. Like, hey, have you ever done martial arts before? And it's like, no, but I've been in a lot of fights. And it's like, okay, sure you have. You know, those kind of things. And not because those two things go hand in hand, but I think a lot of times, like, fishing and hunting is the other situation too. You know, somebody wants to get into it, but they don't want to say, I've never done this before, as a 30-year-old man. For some reason, there's a wall there that people don't want to do that. And I think that for me, being a person who had put up somewhat of a mask and somewhat of, like, tried to be someone that I actually wasn't, or kind of became someone that I really wasn't, thinking that was the way to go. And then being almost like mentored by Bert, just organically, seeing that you don't have to be any of that. You don't have to say you're one thing if you're not. You don't have to present yourself in one way if you're not. Bert was just always very gracious, very honest, and very real. And that weighed on me so heavily because it was like, it was a freedom of sorts. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but when you really do wrap yourself up in an identity, you lose the real identity. Like, I don't know who the fuck I am anymore. So, and I think that was what led to a lot of the depression that I felt, a lot of the you know, the suicidal feelings that I had. I spoke about that at Summer Strong, where, you know, I just got in a hole where I couldn't find the words or the things that I needed to do, because I was still pointing the finger as, like, well, this thing happened to me and this thing happened to me. And really, I just made a lot of bad choices. And the reality of it is, getting to a point where I didn't see any other way forward is what kind of forced me to humbly call my dad and just say I needed some help. You know, like, I just need to get better here. And had a long talk with him, which started the pebble and, you know, the ripples in motion for me, just to start doing better. And right around then is when, you know, Bert extended an offer to give me the job. I don't think he knew I was in such a place so close to the time that he gave me the job, because he actually offered me a job in June, and in April I was kind of like circling the drain. But from that point, that gave me a purpose. Like, Sorinex became a place for me to feel, okay, I'm getting out of bed for more than myself. You know, like, there's a reason for me to get out of here. There's a job for me to do today. And in that place, like, I say that now and it almost sounds kind of pathetic, but in reality, in that moment, I was so proud to have that job. I was so proud to work for Sorinex. It just gave me a self-pride, because now I was associated with this thing by proxy. And it really allowed me to kind of build myself forward from there. So that's where my loyalty and love of Sorinex really resides, is the fact that when nobody else was listening, when nobody else was really going to extend anything to me, Bert gave me a shot and was just like, we'll figure this thing out as we go. And I believe in you. I believe you got something very valuable to give the world. Like, you know, this is somebody saying these things to you 2 months after you essentially didn't want to live anymore. And I don't know if it was because of those words or because of the expectation that I had a job to do, but I certainly know that my life took a different directive and different trajectory because of Bert Soren and because of Sornex. So to kind of circle back to what I was talking about in the beginning, the things that I felt because of that relationship, and it's not like Bert called me every day. It's not like Bert emailed me every day or any of that kind of stuff. But man, when you respect someone or you look up to someone and they're saying these words back to you, and all you've ever seen is them be honest or, see them be real, when those words fall on my ears from him, it hit me like a father would, it hit me like a brother would. So I try to remember that when I talk to people. I try to remember that some people, they just need to hear that, they're doing all right. They just need to hear that they're doing okay. And sometimes you need to say, hey, you can do better than this. Like, I don't try to be the good guy. I don't try to be the nice guy. I try to be the person that's listening. And sometimes people are wanting me to coddle them and give them, like, oh, good job, buddy. When really I just kind of kick them in the ass a little bit. And most of the time, I never tell anybody to do a 180. Very rarely. There are people that need to, but most of my advice is just look at it from a different angle. Look at it from this perspective or answer this question, because ultimately they're doing what they want to do. Most people don't wake up in the world and they're like, oh, man, I really don't want to do heroin today. And then they go do a ton of heroin. It's like they have to make a conscious decision that they don't really want to do this terrible thing anymore that's causing friction in their lives, and then commit to it. You'll say it 1,000 times, but you have to mean it once. That's what I tell people all the time. And even when I'm powerlifting, I got a million reasons why I can't do this, but I just got one reason that I'm going to, because I want to win this thing. So whatever your reason is, whatever your determination is, be convicted in it, and don't beat yourself up that you're not yet. Like, just, hey, if you're an asshole, just keep being an asshole until you're tired of being an asshole, because you're going to wake up one day and you are going to know that you're an asshole. And it's what you do with that feeling at that point that determines who you become after that. Like, it's just like, I talk about drinking too much in college. I drank constantly, but there came a point where it was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this every day. And do you know what I wanted to do that night? Drink. But I knew that morning with a clear head, I did not want to drink anymore. So I made the decision to stop drinking like that. It just, throughout my life, I've had these crossroads where you're a piece of shit, or you're an asshole, or whatever you are, and you just turn around from it and go away. But I've never done it because somebody told me to. I had to get there myself before I would listen to the outside help. You know what I mean?
One of the things that I'm picking up here, just kind of following your story, and I watched that Summer Strong 10 presentation, is that the important thing is that this transition that you've gone through didn't happen overnight. I mean, I think Summer Strong that was 2017, at least when that video was posted. Yeah. So, yep. Your whole run-in with, do I want to live or not, happened before that. And then yep. Your transition from being a powerlifter into more athletic type of body and, doing jiu-jitsu, that has happened over a 2-year span. So your whole transition from, being at the top, like you said before, you're dealing with all these guys who are at the top and they got to transition. It's not overnight, and it's not without bumps in the road either. I mean, you're going on, this has got to be what, a 5-year transition, somewhere around there?
Well, let's just call it, I fell January 26th of 14. So let's call it, legitimately a 7-year kind of regeneration of who I am, because I didn't like that guy either. That's a dangerous quality of having these podcasts, is because I like who I am right now, but hopefully in 5 years, I look back and say, man, that guy was a dumbass. I like myself better now. But there is a worthwhile rhythm to the story. In 14, I was on top of the powerlifting world. Everybody was kind of like supportive, and companies wanted to represent them and all that kind of stuff. But when I got hurt, I realized that my relationship with people was much like a lot of these companies was with me. When they were resourceful, when they were beneficial for me, they were great. And as soon as they couldn't offer me something, I burned the bridge and was gone. And that's what happened after my injury, is a lot of companies left, a lot of people left. And I realized, man, I'm just as guilty as they are. And that kind of circled me back around, like, you got to do better. So for a couple of years, I was like, I got to do better than this. I got to be better than this. And it's just hard. It's like so freaking hard. And even in the midst of wanting to do better, choose better, be better, you just stumble. And that's like around April 12th of 2016 is when I woke up and didn't want to live anymore. So, 2 years, I had gone through some ups and downs. I had come back to powerlifting. I competed. I had done okay, but I just was at conflict with myself, and I couldn't get it right. So I think that's where the feelings of, you know what, I'm just so bad off and so broken, I can't fix this. And really, that's kind of what I felt. So in realizing that I could call my dad, that I could ask for help, that I could get help, that it was too big of a problem for me alone. But now that my parents knew, now that my friends and family knew, it wasn't like I was broken. It was just like, no, you idiot. We've always loved you. We just wanted you to figure out what the hell was going on. We've been here waiting to help you in any way that we could, but you've never asked, and you pushed us away before, in a previous part of your life. So I was very distanced from everyone. Like I said, I was always looking up at the next relationship and kind of like stomping on the throats of the people below me. And that's terrible. That's a horrible way to live your life. But now that's why I kind of like protect my circle and protect myself, because the people that stuck by me, the Bert Sorens of the world, the people that believed in me or just invested in me, they have been through this ride for about 7 years, all of them. So anybody that's out there that thinks you're gonna change your life in a week or a month, you can have life-changing ideas and life-changing decisions, but you're gonna lose valuable people to you today through the course of your change. You're gonna have people tell you, you're just giving up on me, or you're leaving me behind, or you're getting too good for yourself, or whatever. But if you truly feel like there's a way forward in your own life, and I'm not saying just blow your world apart, but I am saying take stock of who's in there. Who's in your life? What are they offering you? What are they giving you? Are they detracting from you? Are they taking from you? And you have to be willing to do what's best for you at a level of right. Not just what's best for you from a financial standpoint, what's not best for you from the outside perspective standpoint. Like when you put your head on the pillow at night, are you doing the right things? Are you surrounding yourself with the right people? Do the people that you're surrounding yourself with and spending time with love you the same as you love them? And those are tough questions, but it opens the door to real self-evaluation and self-healing. And I know those two words kind of get misused, and they're cliched on social media all the time. But again, I'm 7 years into this thing, and there are things that I like. Even the Summer Strong 10 presentation, I watched that, and it was a sad story. Still, it was still a sad story at that time. Now, when I tell that story, it's like, I know that life is good a few years down the road, so it's not a sad story anymore. You know what I mean? Because life is going pretty damn good right now. But that doesn't mean it's going to always go good. It doesn't mean it's going to go hard. But I do know that with work and effort, my life has gotten infinitely better. So I can only assume that the harder I work, the better my life's going to be. So that's why it's like, it's kind of nice to get to a point where there aren't any tears when I tell it. There aren't any like emotional grippings where I'm just watching people fall apart because I'm falling apart up there telling the story. But now it's a story of, yeah, you're going to break. Yeah, you're going to have days where you don't want to do this anymore. You're going to have days when all you want to do is lie when somebody asks if you care about them, because you don't anymore, or you need to move the pieces in your life so that your life is good, so that you can actually do good outward. Because if you have those detractors and those poisons in your life, you're always going to be at some level of turmoil.
And I think one of the big words that you use, and I've heard you say it a lot in our conversation, is yet. And I think a lot of people don't understand the power of that word. I mean, I'm not where I want to be yet, because once you put a comma on it, it means it's still an opportunity. Once you put a period on it, that's the end of it. So wherever you want to get to, wherever you want to be, you might not be there today, but you're going to get there. It's just that one word, that yet word. I'm not there yet, but what are you doing every day to get there? For me, personally, you identified yourself with your powerlifting, and a lot of who you were back then was, an elite level, #1 powerlifter in the world. When I was going through my difficulties, I had lost my job as a director of strength and conditioning at a university, was having some health issues, wasn't able to train. And that's, for a lot of people in our profession, we deal with a lot of our frustration and our disappointments in a weight room or training, however we train that day. So when I stumbled upon your Summer Strong 10 presentation, I might get a little emotional, who knows. It meant a lot to me because I was at that point, you know, and I think doctors and a lot of physical therapists don't understand this. For people like ourselves, we use our training to deal with a lot of our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
If we're having a bad day, we'll just go take it out in the weight room. If we're having a good day, we're gonna go to the weight room. You know, we justify or we mask our feelings with our training. You know, I can blow off some steam in the weight room. I can blow off some steam if I go for, you know, a 20-mile ruck. I can blow off some steam if I go to Jiu-Jitsu for 2 hours. I can deal with it that way, but you're still not dealing with the problem. So
Right.
I was having a big problem with that because I was physically limited. I couldn't do much. I was in a cervical collar, dealing with some things when I saw your presentation, and I reached out to you. I kind of stalked you a little bit. I was like, hey, just saw your presentation, and this will tell everybody the kind of person that you are. We never met each other. We had never talked to each other. We had never seen each other. I saw your presentation. I think I went through Facebook first, or I might have gone through Instagram. I went through one of the social networks, and I told you that, hey, saw your presentation. I need to talk to you, and you didn't know me, and you gave me your phone number.
Yeah.
And then we were going to meet up at Summer Strong 12. Anybody going to Summer Strong and trying to talk to Brandon? Good luck. It's not that he doesn't want to talk to you. He's just very busy those couple days, and it's a time for him to regroup with some of his tribe. So it's not that he didn't talk to me. We made contact. He's like, give me a call next week. I gave you a call. We talked for about an hour. I believe you were driving with, I believe, your son, and,
yep.
and you took the time out of that road trip to talk with me while you were going somewhere with your son. So first and foremost, thank you very much for taking that time, because I was in a bad place, and I've talked openly and honestly about my mental health and my struggles with it, based on who I identified myself as. You know,
Right.
I was a strength and conditioning coach. I didn't see myself as anything else. I mean, besides, you know, I'm a loving husband, a father. I was a strength and conditioning coach. And when that was taken away, my health was taken away, then I was like, who the hell am I?
Right.
So I had to do a lot of self-reflection, and it's gotten me to a point where I'm very healthy, at least with who I am. But at the same time, you know, it's still wanting me to be a better person, a better husband, a better father on a daily basis. And we had Bert on a couple episodes ago, and I told him after Summer Strong 12, I had to go home. I flew home. I got in my car and I called my mom, and I was crying on the phone to my mom. And I told her I had to apologize to my wife and my children for the husband and father that I've been. And that I wasn't doing the job as the husband and the father, and I knew I needed to do better. So that, you know, your talk and getting the Summer Strong 12 allowed me to become the person I am today. But it's pushed me to want to be a better person for all the people's lives I touch on a daily basis. So thank you very much.
Well, the thing I'll say about that is I've also gotten a little bit kinder to myself about the person that I'm going to become. Like I realize now that because of the way that I'm choosing to go about my life, it's inevitable that I will be a different person, because I try to pick up new things. I try to meet new people. I try to try all kinds of different experiences and whatnot. But I used to be in a hurry for these changes, for these evolutions, for these things. And what I realized is you can do those things in a hurried way, and you can almost become dependent on the recognition that you're changing from other people, external or exogenous praise. And I think that can be very difficult, because I've noticed a time or two for myself where it's kind of like when the train starts to get a little bit faster and it starts to come off the rails a little bit. Like, I would go a direction. Let's just say, for example, I was talking to a guy the other day. He was like, I like going to church with my wife, but I don't really get much from the message other than just spending the time with her. So it's like, if that guy continues to go to church every day, at some point his wife's going to expect that he believes devotedly, just like she does. But it's better for him to have the conversation with her now, say, look, I hear the message. It's a positive message. I just don't necessarily identify with God the way that you do, but I will go to church to support you. I think as long as you're honest with your journey, like, so that you're not getting praise for things that you're not really feeling or doing. You know what I mean? Because that opens up other doors to misleading yourself. Like, maybe I do believe in God and I don't really believe in God, or maybe, you know, whatever the conversation is. I just thought it was interesting with this guy recognizing that he loved going to church with his wife because it was doing something that she was devoted to, you know, but he didn't feel devoted to this thing. And I think a lot of guys find themselves in those traps, whether it's, you know, going to the bar with your girlfriend because she loves to drink and you don't love to drink, or whatever it is. Don't let yourself get influenced to become something that you're not. We all have a strong inner voice, especially, I think there's something about men, especially, that we want to have a title, not necessarily the biggest title or whatever, but we like to be proud of what we do. So I think that's where a lot of that, I am a strength coach, or I was a power lifter, I think it's no different than 1,000 years ago when it was like, I'm a soldier, or I'm a farmer, or, you know, whatever it was, because within our tribe, our titles give us distinction. They give us meaning. They give us a recognized kind of stature. You know what I mean? So when you can say I'm a director of strength conditioning, that is a statement that elevates you to a certain level automatically. And I think that's a wonderful thing, but I also think it's a great thing to be able to say, hey, I'm Mark. You know what I mean? And like, that's a really, and like that just see where they go with that, because I've done that a lot too, because a lot of times I find that people have treated me differently when you go into this, hey, I'm a strength coach, or hey, I'm this, or I'm that. Just like, hey, I'm Brandon, I work for Sornex, and most people don't know what that is. So it's like, I kind of like being a little bit, because I've had such a weird kind of like visibility, you know, I've had recognition, I've had following and that kind of stuff. And I realize that there's value to it, but most of that isn't real. So I would rather meet somebody and have a connection with them on the fact that, hey, I'm Mark, hey, I'm Brandon, rather than like a dick measuring contest of, hey, I'm the director of strength conditioning, and hey, I'm this guy. You know, like, just lose the pretense and let's just be who we are. You know, like, most of the time I can sit down and talk to anybody about anything because we're just all people, you know.
Well, it's also one of the nice.
At 40 years old, I'm not trying to impress anybody anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to get through this thing. I figure I got 33 to 35 years left on this rock. So I'm just trying to live it the best I can. Raise my son that he not make the same mistakes that I did. And certainly if he did, you know, the one thing I've always told him is, man, if you put a body in the ground, I'll help you bury it, but you got to tell me. Like, you can't go through this life not asking me questions, not leaning on me for help. Like, if I had leaned on my dad, my life would have been so much different, because here's the thing. I love the saying, you know, when my dad was 16, he's the dumbest man I'd ever met. And at 35, he knew everything. So it's like, my dad never gave me bad advice. He just gave me the advice I didn't want to hear. He gave me the advice that was counter to what I thought I knew more than him. And that's all I really want to do is ground that relationship in with my son, so that when he's at a crossroads, when he's about to get in a car with somebody that's had too much to drink, or if he's had too much to drink himself, or if he's in a relationship with a girl that he just doesn't feel the same about anymore, like, I want those phone calls. I want him to understand more than anything, like, this is where I'll get emotional. That's the only fight I'm worried about, is helping my son get through this thing. Because as I get older, there's so many times I look back at my life that I should have died. You know, there's just so many times because of stupid decisions. Had a motorcycle, never had, I was either 0 or 150 miles an hour. Like, there was no in between. You know, I used to love to race my car. Like, I had a car and I just whipped through the back roads and go as fast as I could. Like, I should be dead by now, you know. And I think there's a part of him, or part of me in him, that is that adventurous, thrill seeker type. And it's just like, I don't want him to go through life taking those chances. Like, it's hard. It's hard to be a dad, but the best thing I'm trying to do right now is fight forward for him so that I can be there if he needs me until he can stand on his own. Because I'll tell you right now, I fell at 32. I really kind of started correcting myself at 35. It took my dad 35 years to be here to help me see me through this stuff. You know what I mean? So maybe I'm the idiot. Maybe I'm a slow learner or something like that. But, I'm grateful that my dad was here, because if he wasn't, I don't know who I would have called that day. So that's why I feel that way. I really, really want to be there for him. I just want to be somebody that he looks up to, because I haven't always been somebody worth looking up to.
I
Well,
think we
that's-
all go
I
through
mean-
that as fathers. I mean, when you're telling that, I went through that same scenario in my head the past 2 days about my kid. I looked at the things that I've done in the past, and I don't want him to do that. And, it's the unfortunate stress of being a father, and because your job is to make your kid better than you,
Yeah.
And
in the world around us right now is what's so scary is I don't know how to prepare him for it, because, there's just so many issues, and I don't want to make this a political thing or anything like that, but there's just things like, at some point I get being respectful, I get holding your tongue, and then there's times when a man has to speak, and helping him, helping myself, helping you guys, anybody navigate that right now, it's a minefield. When do you speak? When do you stand up for what you believe in? Where do you draw the line? And how do you do so without, where does your line of freedom extend to without infringing on someone else's? Like, where do you hold the line? And that's all I'm trying to do for him, is to be conscious of those types of things and help him through it, because it's hard for us. I mean, we have our own struggles with it too. If you put anything on the internet, you're opening yourself up to that. So I don't know, man. It's so freaking hard to watch these kids grow up, because I had the realization, I got 3 summers left with this guy. You know what I mean? I got 3 summers left with him. And it's like, how much can I give him in that?
Yep.
So I don't know. I just hope that the one thing that I really do hope through all of this is, because, like, a lot of men do reach out to me. A lot of men do ask me questions, communicate with me. I would feel like the biggest failure in the world if my son never did. You know what I mean? It's like, that's where all this is going for me, is like, this is learned experience. This is learned examples. I get 10 messages a day from guys in their situation. So it's like, I'm data collecting all these things, that situations I'm not necessarily in, but other men are struggling with. And I really think that's the unspoken problem in this country right now, is that men are struggling. They're really in a place. I think it comes from, we're all seeking that title, which we should all seek to live a life that we want. We should all seek to be good at what we do. But I think there's conflicting truths about how we should live our lives in a modern society.
Yeah.
You can't be, not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Not everybody can work 80 hours a week. Not everybody can have $10 million. Like, I see these men's groups that perpetuate these ideas that, like, you got to leave corporate America, you got to do this kind of stuff. Let's just forget that people can do these things. Let's just get the idea that we can make the most of what we've got and do better in time. But yeah, I'm getting off on a tangent there a little bit, but I just think
I like where you're going. There's a war on men, for sure.
Yeah, I just think
that's not to say that we don't have our problems. There's things that we can work on, but at the end of the day, there's a war against men. And you know what? As far as I see it, it started by other men. There's other men at the top that are targeting us, and that's what war has always been, and that's what we're prepared to do. It's just got to be done in a different way than in the past.
That's right, man. I think a group of guys like us, just normal guys. I mean, normal guys with experience, with things under our belt that we've done. You invest downward into your kids. I don't care about impressing anybody else. Like, if the tools I learn and the stories I hear don't impact my kid, well, I failed. So I'm trying to be an example. I know you guys are trying to be examples. If we can just have a better class of men, those arguments look irrelevant. They look ridiculous. It's like, sure, toxic masculinity is a real thing. It absolutely is. But if we become insufferable of it, if we say we don't approve of that, we don't, and teach our kids better, do better ourselves, I think it eliminates itself. Like, because when I call a red ball blue, people think I'm the idiot. You know what I mean? So if people are saying there's toxic masculinity and toxic masculinity, and it's just not a thing anymore because we raise our sons better, we become better men ourselves. I think we can win that one pretty easily. You know, just do better.
Yeah, I don't know where society has made it a bad thing to be masculine or be a man. I mean, I still think every day that I'm a man, and I thank God that there's masculinity. I like being a man. I like doing masculine things. I don't really care about anybody else. I'm not doing anything to offend anybody. But at the end of the day, you look at, like, I think the post was from Ryan Mickler today with his son by a river, and he's like, my job is to be somebody worthy for him to look up to. That for his son to want, for his son wants to be like him, but it's up to him to make himself to be somebody that his son wants to become. Sorry about that. Got a little tongue tied there.
No, well, and here's, I think that's awesome. And I think what happens in that situation, and this is no fault of Ryan's, I mean, I'm guilty of it too. You know, you can look at Ryan, you can look at his life, and you can become very, very envious of that and say, you know, hey, he's got it made. He's got a great life. So it's easy for him to say these things. And I think it's very, very simple to try to mimic that, you know, and like, I don't think that's his message at all. No. I think his message is, if you're the blue collar guy punching a time clock and you're doing the best you can, do the best you can. Like, make sure it is the best you can. Make sure that when you get home from this job, you're not dumping yourself right into a recliner. You're not dumping yourself like right into this like checkout zone. You're coming home, you're invested in your kids, even if it's just asking how their day was, sitting down with them for 5 minutes and doing some homework. I mean, let's be honest. Life is expensive and life is hard. So there are people out there that are just trying to figure out how to be the best they can. But our kids are starving. They're dry sponges to our water. They're desperate for us to check on them. They're desperate for us to ask how they're doing. They're desperate for us to get involved, to really give a shit. And I see over and over and over and over parents that just don't think they can, or they don't think they measure up, or they don't think that they can have the impact that Ryan Mickler has. Maybe it's not to the same scale. Maybe it's not. But if you're doing the best that you can, if you're invested in your kids, if you're engaging with your kids, if you're showing them that when you come in the door, if you want to watch TV and they want to watch a show, watch the show with them. Like, I've learned that a long time ago. It just, the battles that I used to put up to get my way just showed how spoiled I was, you know? So I'm not saying all the time, but over time, if you're like, hey, I'll watch a show with you, if you watch one of mine, eventually you can swing them over to watching the History Channel every once in a while and figuring some things out. But I think it's just, every man needs to take a hard look at themselves and just ask, what am I doing here? And I go back to that saying before, nobody was born a loser. Like, whatever you were born as, you were the strongest swimmer. You were a winner by default. Like, you got there for a fucking reason. You are a miracle existence, whether you believe in God or whether you believe in science, like whatever you think, you're the one. Like, I don't think you were born to relegate yourself to suck. Like, I just don't think that was possible. Every single thing that I'll go on my genetics rant here for a minute, because at 18, I was a very, very, very good soccer player. I had aspirations of playing collegiate soccer. So at 18, nobody would have looked at me and said, that kid's got the genetics to be a world-class powerlifter. Well, at 30 years old, when I was a world-class powerlifter, nobody would look at me and say, man, that guy's got the genetics to run marathons. That guy's got the genetics to row 100,000 meters in a day. That guy's got the genetics to weigh 235 rip pounds and be a Jiu-Jitsu player. Like, genetics are a funny thing because they're indeterminate until we die. And we can look at what we could do with what effort we input. So you might have amazing genetics to be a freaking ballerina, but you've never danced a day in your life, so you don't know that. We have to have input on these genetic potentials. We have to push ourselves and strive, and then we can actualize who we become in the same way that we can in this life. Whatever we want to do. If you live in America right now, as much as it's changed in the last 2 years, I still believe it's the greatest country in the world, and I still believe that wherever you are right now, if you want to be a doctor, there's a pathway to you being a doctor in this country. I don't care if you're working at McDonald's. They got programs that'll get you into college. They got programs that'll let you work at McDonald's through college and get your degree, get your master's, and go forward to your doctorate. Like, there is a pathway wherever you are. It's going to be harder for some. It's going to be easier for some. But if you're a father out there that's struggling and wants to do better and knows he can do better, there's a pathway to that too. That's the greatest thing. Most of the time, it's just knocking on a door and turning a knob, asking how a kid's doing. You know, it's much easier than becoming a doctor, but it's more important than becoming a doctor. The only thing that becoming a doctor does is gives you more income and gives you more opportunity to do different things. It's no different than, I mean, a doctor is probably going to have less opportunity to throw baseball with their kid than a guy that punches the clock at 3 o'clock and comes home. You know, it's like, we all have more opportunity to do greatness, whether it's for our kids, whether it's for ourselves, for our families, our communities. And that's all I'm pushing for. And it takes strong people. And that's where Sorinex gets involved. I want people that are pushing their bodies, pushing their minds, because I've never thought Sorinex was just strength of body. You know, it really is people that are doing amazing things, taking chances in life, going and pushing every aspect of themselves. You know, it really is a physical culture.
As I tell everybody, my training now is for my own mental health. I mean,
for sure. Keeps me going.
I love the grind. I love all the things. And I love the story that Bert said about, I guess you'd put some goals out for some of your clients and they looked at you and go, oh, it must be easy for you, Brandon. And that's where you basically told them to hold your beer. And that's when you did the 100K on the rower, or actually the first time you did a half marathon. And then you did a half marathon on the rower, like for 7 straight days, which, by the way, is kind of nutty. And then I guess the next one was to do a marathon. And then you're like, all right, I'll do 100K. Yeah. And anybody that's been on a rower, 100K is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of those things. You had a nice
setup, but
it's one of those things too, is it was like, I need mountains. You know, I need things to conquer. I need things, like I said, a bored me is a very self-destructive version of me, but an excited and engaged me is a well-aimed missile. You know, I get the job done. I do what I set out to do. And some of those goals are just as, because I'm having a beer and I'll run my mouth and put my ass behind it. But if I had not done 100,000 meters, if I got to 75 and cashed out, it's like, all right, that's what I could give. Because that is one thing I can say about myself. In the midst of something, I'm going to give you everything I have for it. And if I can't do it, it's literally because there was no other way I could have done it. I don't leave shit on the table. I don't leave effort in the hole. It's like, but I would come back and I would get it someday. Like if I had fallen 25,000 short, I would have found a way to do it. You know, I've been looking at doing a 24-hour max meter row, just seeing how far I can get, that kind of thing. See if I can keep that 10,000 an hour kind of pace. And hit 240,000. I mean, that would be awesome. And then I talk shit to myself where it's like, well, why couldn't you do 250? That sounds a lot better than 240. But that's the whole reason I did a marathon the first time. I started a half marathon and I was like, who the hell starts something with half in the title? So I ended up doing a full marathon just because I was pissed off about doing something with a half.
Wow. Let's talk about jiu-jitsu a little bit. I'm interested in, I mean, it's got to be part of your whole transition, your body transition, because, you know, a power lifter body coming into jiu-jitsu they've got a lot of advantages, but, you know, those little guys on the ground that know what they're doing and they're nimble and flexible and, you know, they know how to wrap their legs around your neck real quick. You know, it's tough. Yeah. So tell us about, you know, I guess you said you did a couple of times when you were still into powerlifting.
Yeah.
I guess over the past couple months or year, you've got into it, but talk to me about that whole transition with your body.
Well, I think that's one of the things that martial arts is so good for, is it kind of melts away this idea of what strength really is. You know, absolute strength is awesome. If I got a 30-second fight and I've got to kill someone, I'm going to choose the bigger, stronger version of myself. If I've got to put someone on the ground and hold them there in a way until I can get myself to safety or show that, hey, I want you to stand up from this and I want you to be okay, but you need to stop, I'm going to use jiu-jitsu. I'm going to use that part of myself now, because smashing somebody's easy. Like, it lasts 30 seconds. And I think that's something that's facing a lot of men right now, is they have this puffed up imagination of their capability. And what I loved about jiu-jitsu is it stripped away any false pretense that I had about what I was capable of. There's a lady that she's awesome. Her name is Linda Mihalik, and she's a warrior. And she was one of the first people in my first class, and she choked me out, no problem. She's like 129 pounds, 130 pounds, something like that. And just over and over and over. And you really start to understand that there are just aspects of what we think we are that have no relevance of truth whatsoever. I was only strong under a barbell, only strong, because if somebody had like hurt my kid 1,000 yards away from me and I had to get there in a hurry, I probably would have had a stroke. Like, when you really start to dissect life for what it is, what could happen and what might be, the nuances of living are just so fragile and so dissected that I thought that because I was big and strong, I was King Kong. You know, I thought that nothing could touch me, nothing could hurt me. And that was just completely false. I mean, if I'd gotten myself in a situation with Linda, yeah, I probably could have trapped her there for a little while, but even at my biggest, she would have worked her way out. I mean, she's one of those people that finds the crack that she can sneak her arm into and then work the elbow to. But I wrestle with guys, Adam, Corey, Will, I mean, the smaller guys in my classes, and even the bigger guys that I am definitely stronger than, they outposition me or they out-technique me and they outwork me. And there's something really, really beautiful about that, because we all have different strengths. We all have different gifts. And I think working with people who are working their strengths against your weaknesses really does enhance their strengths, because your weaknesses get brought up and you defend better and you attack better. But also at the same time, you learn that your strength can't be this all for nothing thing. Like, if I go all out for 30 seconds, I'm cooked. If it's a 5 or 10 minute round, I'm done. So you have to temper yourself. And I just think jiu-jitsu for a guy like me has opened so much vision to what life can be. Like, I can't be this guy that goes 100 miles an hour at things, because I burn out too quick. And then it's like, I've just got to slug my way through the finish. I'm much better off if I kind of take my time, feel things out, give a little bit, take a little bit, and then go to work about attacking the things that I find that I can attack, defending the things I need to defend, and then ultimately, hopefully, working towards a victory. And then if not, sitting down with the guy that just beat me or choked me out and saying, how'd you do that? You know, and learning from those mistakes, learning from those difficulties. It really is the best thing, because the second that you think you know it, somebody's going to come in that's better at it than you, and just it's just an awesome way to live, knowing that you always have to be on. It's like rock climbing for me. There's no point when I'm rock climbing where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and chill out. You know what I mean? It's always intense until it's over.
You know, it's interesting you bring up rock climbing, because I've used this example sometimes when, like teaching people martial arts and jiu-jitsu. Do you know that women naturally are better rock climbers than men?
Oh, I would guarantee they're better at everything, I can tell you.
and it's because, like, as men, we're going to grip the rock with everything we got, right?
Yeah.
Instead of this feeling of just kind of adjusting, just giving it enough of what you need to hold yourself there, and then you're able to sustain yourself longer, so men typically burn out longer. And that's what I found out a lot of times, like bigger guys who've, used to lifting weights or powerlifting, that type of thing, the way their neurons fire, they're just, they're ready to give everything, all in one shot. It burns everything up. And then the jiu-jitsu guy is just there, nice and relaxed, and then just tenses and attacks when he has to, and when he has that opportunity.
I had two experiences that were completely humbling. One guy, he was on top of me. He was a brown belt, and he was working, and I was just like resisting him with everything I had. And he was like, dude, like, close your mouth, only breathe through your nose. Forget that you ever knew how to deadlift. He's like, this isn't max effort. Like, if you can't breathe with just your mouth closed, with just your nose, you're going way too hard. Like, this should not be a struggle. Every once in a while, but it shouldn't be like a full-blown struggle. And then the other guy was a black belt, and this was the most devastating control I've ever felt, because he only moved when I moved. So he was in a position on top of me. It would have been like a half guard. I was on my side. was going to kind of go for, I was trying to go for a little bit of something with his foot. Like I was trying to draw it into me, but nevertheless, it just wasn't working. And every time that I would make a movement, his body would come in, and then he would just hold. And then I would make another move to like try to slip something out. And then I just kept, next thing I know, I'm like in this ball, and then he inverts me. And it was over before it even started. And he was humming when he was doing it. Like he wasn't even straining. And that was the point. He was like, I was so comfortable I could hum, and you were going as hard as you could go and you could do nothing. And it wasn't an asshole kind of thing. It was just really like, hey dude, just chill out. Like move, work. Don't try to do it all in one move. Like, and that's how I am. That's the biggest differentiator for me from powerlifting is when I see somebody do something smoothly, I immediately want to implement it as quickly and hard as I can, you know. And it's just like the old adage, like it's slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You know, you do something the right way, fluidly, it's going to be perfect, and it's going to look that way. And me, it looks just like a drag car trying to do some kind of arm bar or something like that. It's just try to get there as fast as I can and hold on. So
I think, because we've all been practitioners of jujitsu. One of the things that it really taught me was to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations, you know,
yeah,
and
for sure.
Cause you're always there. I mean, you're not going to go an hour training session with 10 training partners and not be caught in something very bad. And you really, when it turns bad, it's when you're freaking out.
Oh yeah.
And you lose all control. And it's probably, I'd be interested in a study, but I think probably more injuries happen in training sessions when it's white belt on white belt crime, basically. You know,
yeah, I think the white belt statistic is true. I don't know if it's on white belts though, or if it's like on gracious blue and purple belts that are just trying to help them out, and then they go spasmo or something. But I'm definitely guilty of being that guy. I think everybody in the gym hated me the first 2 or 3 months that I was there until I kind of chilled out a little bit.
Until the black belt started humming.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It was like, Brandon, you're going to be a lot longer for this journey in jiu-jitsu if you just learn to relax a little bit, or relax, as they like to say.
Relax, yeah.
Now, have you gotten your son into hunting and or jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, he's hunted with me. He got a deer a couple years ago. Last year, he was just kind of in the mode of 8th grade. He had a lot going on with football and stuff, so he wasn't super hot on it. Like he wasn't really driven to do it. And I'm one of those people that's like, hey, if you tell me you want to do something, we'll put the gas on it, but I'm not going to like push you towards something either. But this year, I just got him a bow. He's been expressing a lot of interest in shooting the bow and kind of doing that stuff. So I think that will lead into more hunting because we're going to shoot some 3D targets and whatnot. And I think he made a great shot, like perfect heart shot a couple years ago with a rifle. And then for some reason, I think over the next year, he kind of developed this fear of injuring a deer. So I think that was some of his hesitation for not going. Like I think it happened at school. One of his friends injured a deer, and it was pretty bad. So I think that kind of gave him pause. But you know, I had success in Hawaii just recently on an axis deer hunt with my bow, and he was really fired up about that. And then I'm going to go deer hunting again very soon in Kentucky, and then Tennessee and Minnesota, as well as I got an elk hunt out in Arizona. So I think by the time January rolls around and we'll do some doe cruises, he'll be ready to get out there and maybe take a doe or two and see if we can't put some of that on the table, you know, for the family dinner and kind of give him a little moment to be puffed up and proud. But that's always a good thing. And then the jiu-jitsu. So his school just got wrestling a few years ago. Actually, 2 counties north of this, there's a strong wrestling history. And I really want him to grapple. I think there's something just intrinsic to the struggle, like we talked about, getting comfortable in uncomfortable situations, as well as, I mean, wrestlers are just phenomenal athletes. Like if you become a talented wrestler at any level, you got my respect because I know you're going to bring it. And I told him, I said, look,
the work ethic that they teach and you have to have in order just to compete.
Yeah, it's insane. So I'm hoping, and I say insane in the best way, I'm hoping that he he goes with the school wrestling because that would kind of give him his own identity with it for, at least through his senior year. He always has an open door to come to jiu-jitsu with me after football, which is what we've talked about. His interest is actually in Muay Thai. He found Muay Thai on YouTube. So my gym has an awesome Muay Thai class. It's just something that, from a striking standpoint, I just want him to understand the potential dangers of hitting someone and as well as being hit, especially as you become trained at it. You hit an untrained person as a trained person, and that's a very different situation, and again, just navigating life in 2021, what that looks like on all fronts. I think jiu-jitsu is a really cool way to go. Wrestling is a really cool way to go because you're going to be able to defend yourself in most any situation, and your dominance is going to be putting somebody on the ground and holding them there, rather than striking. So if I had my druthers, I would like to have him in jiu-jitsu with me so we could do something together and kind of push each other and maybe grapple some at home. But, like I said, if he says Muay Thai, that's the way he'll go. If he says wrestling, that's the way he'll go. But I do think that martial arts are something that every parent should really invest their child in. And I want to say this just because I got a platform to say it. I think a lot of parents ask me what I think the trajectory for an athlete should be. And I'll say this, not necessarily from my own experiences, but from mistakes I've made and experiences I've seen of others. Number one, I would get my child in water as soon as possible, 1 to 2 years old, get them into some of those safety water awareness classes. It's great for bonding with parents. After that, I would get my child into gymnastics somewhere around 3, maybe 4. I think a martial art at 4 to 5 years old is an excellent graduation to continue gymnastics, but also add martial arts as a secondary. And then around 6, find 1 or 2 sports, and then maybe around 8 or 9, add a third, and then go into the process of elimination. What sticks, what's working, what's fun, what's not. But just try different things. Get your kid involved in a lot of stuff. But the foundation would be the water safety, the gymnastics, and martial arts, because I think those 3 will lend to a better life on all fronts.
Yeah, I think that's a good lineup right there because of the movement. All the movements you're going to use going forward are in every single one of those first 3.
Well, and to say this, unfortunately, I had a cousin that drowned. She was special needs and she did drown. This was 10 or 12 years ago now, but it's just something that can be avoided. You hear about drownings all the time, little kids and stuff. And accidents can always happen. I mean, I lost a friend. He was an adult not too long ago, a couple of years ago, actually, to drowning. And it's just something that it doesn't have to happen. It's something that can be enjoyable. It's something that you can do as a family, mom and dad with a baby getting in the water, splashing around. But it also can protect them. It's just, I couldn't deal with it. Like, I don't know what happened to me if something happened to my son.
Yeah.
So,
and there's some good places out there too that they'll take kids as young as 6 months or a year, and teach them how to float on their back. If they fall in the water, it's crazy what they could do with such a young kid.
But like you said, it's all body awareness, body movement.
Well, and still with the planet being still 2/3 water, you're gonna want to kind of be safe in water.
For sure. You never know when you're going to find yourself in a weird situation,
And I swam throughout college. So like when I had a buddy who never learned how to swim, we went to visit his parents and they lived on the water.
Yeah.
Coincidentally. And every time he came home, his dad would give him $100 if he would swim across the inlet. I'm like, I'll take that $100. I'll do it right now. And because he never learned how to swim, he wouldn't do it. And he was a grown adult, so he was terrified of water. So get your children into the water as soon as possible. For me, all 3 of my children went through a water class with me, and it was great bonding, like you said. I mean, it was daddy and me class at the local YMCA. So
that's what I was going to say. Most YMCA's offer that. Like, I think some of them are next to nothing, especially if you have any kind of need. They're pennies. So it's just something worthwhile to do. I have a brother right now that's very, very terrified of water. He's a little better than he was, but just never, ever got comfortable with it. And at some point it just became a full-on fear. Interesting little tidbit about the school I went to. It was actually a requirement for graduation to be able to swim 100 meters. And I think that went back to, and I'm maybe stepping on history here a little bit, but I think it goes back to the fact school I went to was founded in 1859. It was 50% white, 50% black. All the population had to come from Appalachia, and you pay no tuition to go to school here. You exchange work for your tuition. It's now one of the most richly endowed schools in the country because when people graduate, they donate back. But I think in 1859, when they drafted up the bylaws of the university, they were concerned for their student body from the standpoint of a lynching with racial division and whatnot. And it's a pretty common stereotype in the South that a lot of black people, or not stereotype, but it was stereotypical that they would throw these young black people in the water and they would drown because the stereotype was that most couldn't swim. So they would, I think in prevention of that, that was one of the things that they wrote into the bylaws, so that every student be able to swim.
Wow. Cool.
And it still stands
What's the name
today.
of the school? What's the name
Berea
of the school?
College.
Berea
College. Yeah, it's here. That's where I am right now. It was founded by a pastor, and I think that was the only thing that ever prevented him from being hung by the public, because there were tensions, and literally the Battle of Richmond here in Kentucky was it's like the bloodline between the North and the South. So, for him to come here, like, I can't imagine the balls the dude had on him, like to come here in 1859 and to have a school like that, and to stand down, like just to stand his ground and hold the line. But, it's still going today. There's still like extreme dedication to the minority population, the segregation being done away with, like, completely. It never even became a part of the school. It was just like, we're going to have a university for all. So
what's unfortunate about this country is that stories like that aren't on the evening news.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and it's another thing too. It answers a lot of questions about the college, the debt stuff for a lot of students, because I think, the average graduation debt for a Berea College student is sub $5,000. And most of that is just like living maintenance, bridging. Like, you just need a little money for an apartment, or you need a Pell Grant for a computer or something like that. It might be a little more than that, but I mean, I graduated completely debt free, didn't know anything. So, it's pretty awesome that you can go to school, you can work 10 to 15 hours a week and graduate with a full blown degree.
Yeah.
Well, that's what a lot of people in today's society don't want to own up to, that, university and colleges are a business.
Oh, they're sports programs wrapped in academia. And,
Well,
I don't think.
Good.
I just got to be careful saying that, because it's part of the world that we live in, and it's part of the world that I work in. But it's also very true. Like, if the school is talking about going bankrupt because your football program doesn't have a team this year, well, what is the school actually doing? You know what I mean? Like, so it's not an asshole thing to ask questions when the data suggests that there's a problem.
Well, and why aren't you touching your $1 billion endowment? I mean, why aren't you doing that? I mean, like most of the universities and schools we're talking about have hundreds of millions of dollars in endowment. So
sure,
that's money that they could use. I mean, I don't think any education is worth $240,000 of debt.
No,
I just don't. It's just that the ends don't justify the means in that one, because you have a lot of kids coming out of college right now, $240,000 in debt, but they can't get a job.
Well, and think about this: if you break it down into reality, that $240,000 is going to probably be more in line with $300,000 to $375,000. And you break that down, let's just call it 40, or let's just call it 400,000 for argument's sake. That's $20,000 over 20 years. Like,
yep.
How do you ever pay that back? So it's a real problem for me when we encourage this, and it's almost a losing adventure from the beginning because of what you said, just the reality of the financials. But secondarily, it's very, very difficult for an 18-year-old to go out here and get a home loan for $240,000, or an 18-year-old to go out here and get a $100,000 business loan. But we perpetuate this idea that this is a better way, for whatever reason. And now we've gotten into a point where we're lacking tradesmen. My brother, he started his own business when he was 14, doing lawn care services. He still owns that business today. He went to school for a year and a half. My parents were just devastated when he dropped out of school, but he's probably the most successful of the three brothers, because he stuck to his business. He built it out. He didn't further indebted himself into a school program. He was doing lawn care, like golf course management or some shit like that. He's like, this is redundancy. This is all redundancy for a piece of paper. He was like, I'd be better off just building my business better. So
you know what? I haven't come across someone in our age group who at between 18 and 22 years old knew what they wanted to do at the end of that.
Well, and that's the other thing too. I think college should be a lot more like what they offered my mom. She actually worked at the college, but it was like, hey, come take 1 or 2 classes a semester. In 10 or 12 years, you'll kind of have a better idea where you want to be, what you want to do. And when you graduate, then you're going to be 30 years old, ready to like, hey, I'm getting into my life now. College would be a lot better off if you could do it like that, I think.
Absolutely.
Just kind of go at your own pace.
Even hit up the junior or the community colleges first and knock out some of the general requirements before.
Sure.
I mean, I went to college at 17.
Yeah.
By the way, huge mistake. Had a blast, but a horrible mistake. I mean,
for sure.
My parents should have sent me back, and the school shouldn't have wanted me back. But somehow now I have a master's degree. So figure that one out. I really think, there's a lot of things that we've touched on in our discussion, and I definitely want to have you back on again, because we really didn't talk about training.
No, I was afraid of that. Chris didn't know what I was saying whenever we started this thing. I was talking about family and whatnot, and he's like, I don't know if we're going to get into that at all. And I was like, we probably will.
I had a feeling I knew we were going to go down a different path, and I love it.
Yeah.
For those that are listening, how can they reach out to you? How can they keep in contact with you? And what's the best way for them to do so?
So Brandon Lilly 3 is pretty much the standard across everything. It's Lilly is Lilly. Instagram is Brandon Lilly 3. My Yahoo account is brandonlilly3@yahoo.com. You can email me there. You can email me at brandon@Sornex. I have an alternate page, which is called Peace, Love, and Meat. And that page is really kind of directed to this journey, the training, the food, the kind of things like that. I was offering a daily workout. I was offering some journal prompts. I intend to get back to some of that stuff. Just kind of needed to take a break from it for a little while the world lost its damn mind. So look for some of that stuff, but really and truly enjoyed the conversation. Would love to have one that was just strictly about training. So I apologize for not going that direction, but at the same time, anytime that you guys want to get together and talk training, I'll stick to it.
No, I honestly thought that it would be more centered around what we talked about today. Because I'll tell you what.
Good.
Mark's talked about his story about you a number of times in the podcast, but even in private, he's told me 2 or 3 times. So
sure.
That's no BS, man. You really helped him, and it's an honor to have you on the show because you're really helping people out in the world.
I appreciate it, man.
So
thank you.
The only thing
thank you for coming on.
The only thing I want to end on is what did the people at Summer Strong last year think of you and Bo rolling mats out out on the turf at Sornex and start rolling with each other? Because if I had saw that, I would have been terrified.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it was one of those deals where it was like ask forgiveness rather than permission. Me and Jamie Shira and Bo had kind of like, we had talked about it a little bit. We had told one other guy that we were going to try to roll. I knew that there were a few people that would probably have a rash guard or at least something they could throw on and roll if they wanted to. But man, it was one of those things. It was a very, very organic Summer Strong moment where something just popped off and happened. And I think there was a real buzz around it, a real cool feel around it. So I'm going to, I went and trained at Deepwater down there in Columbia. So I'm going to talk to them maybe about coming over and bringing some mats and maybe doing it again. But I got to talk to Bert about it this time. He thought it was totally awesome. But just to probably good to get the man's blessing on something like that again. So, but yeah, I just see the jiu-jitsu market as a place where, you know, it's much like the outdoors thing. When I started shooting my bow again and started hunting again, I'm just very passionate about things, and I go all in. And the more people I talk to about jiu-jitsu, you know, it's they're just not very certain about training. There's a lot of mixed messages about what training is and what training should be for jiu-jitsu. I think a lot of people still buy into the fact that it can make them stiff and make them tight, and make them sore. But they're, and that's possible. I can make anybody those things, but I can also do things to help them out. So I think this is an organic way for me to train, find new people, introduce Sorinex to new people. And that's all I try to do, is just do it the organic way. I never want to be a salesman. I just want to talk about things I love, and that's part of it. So
Awesome.
Well, once again, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for your friendship, and more importantly, you taking the time out for somebody that you had no idea who I was, and really helping me through a rough part of my life. And your continued help and friendship and support means the world to me. So if there's
I appreciate it.
Anything I can ever do for you, Brandon, you don't have to hesitate, and I'll be there.
All right, brother. Well, let's do the training episode soon.
Awesome.
You got.
I am Chris Ray. That's Brandon Lilly. He is.
I am Mark Spellman. He is
Chris Ray. We're the
Brandon
Athlete
Lilly.
Hackers. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
all my best. God bless and peace.
Peace.